I mean, everybody understands cap rate, right? So cap rate is, if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, it's the NOI divided by the purchase price, right? So let's just walk through that. So you've got your rent, right? Number of apartments and, times the rent times 12. Then you've got to take a vacancy and bad debt number off that, right? Mm-hmm. And by the way, if the vacancy in your city is 1%, doesn't mean you get to put 1% in your pro forma on your new construction. That's 1% for the average price apartments. You're top of the market. So you're going to have to work harder to get those apartments full. Make sense? Right? So you've got to put double the vacancy rate or some number that's reasonable. Otherwise, you won't come off as being credible to your, to your investor if you put that in there. I tell you, we're selling a building right now, and it's a student housing building. It's 1,000 units, and it really is zero. And it's been zero for 2 years, the vacancy. Yeah. So I put zero on the pro forma. Everybody called me on it. I said, listen, I get it, but it really is zero. And I can really go, I couldn't even take anything to my partners with zero on it. So, well, fine, then put in 1% or put in 1.5%. Yeah. Whereas the standard in student housing is put in 5%, right? So again, you got to get the right number. So we're going expenses, right, minus your vacancy, right? You're going to add in your parking and so on. Then you're going to take off your operating costs, heat, hydro, water, taxes. Sub-metering is generally, if you can do that, better, right? Then you've got management, maintenance, administration, and those are going to vary from company to company and so on, right? So you come up with an NOI. So you divide that NOI by the purchase price, and you come up with the cap rate, right? That's how we buy and sell apartment buildings. It's not more complicated than that, although institutional investors look at it on an IRR basis, and we should talk about IRR basis for new apartment construction. So that'd be the cap rate on purchase, but what we want to look at when we're working with you is your development cap rate, right? So now we're going to take NOI divided by total construction cost, right? So let's say if your total construction cost, I'm on the left-hand side of the screen, if your total construction cost were $100 million and your NOI were $6 million, you'd have a 6% development yield. Everyone agree? Right? 6 million over 100. Now, when you go to sell that building, you're going to get better than a 6% cap rate for it, i.e. meaning a lower number, right? So you're going to get a 4.5% cap rate on that, right? So someone's, for that $6 million of money, of $6 million NOI, they're going to pay you $120 or $130 million. Fair enough? I haven't done the math exactly, but it'll be somewhere around there, right? And that would mean a 4.5% cap rate, right? So you've got a development cap rate of NOI over purchase price. You've got a sale cap rate, or if you buy the building back from yourself, right? That's sort of the delta on the profit. And that delta should be, 100 points or 125 points or 150 points on concrete product, right? Concrete product is going to fetch you a lower cap rate when it's finished. So concrete product in Toronto today might fetch you, let's say, 4%. We don't exactly know what the cap rate is because we haven't built and sold a brand new apartment building in Toronto. We sold lots in the suburbs, right? Or in Kitchener, Waterloo, London, Ottawa, places like that. But that's the important numbers. When we first run the numbers, we'll say to the guy, this is your NOI. What would you guess is your total development cost, all in? So that's everything, right? That number's, it should be in the 5s on concrete, and on stick product, it hopefully is in the 6s, right? We've seen guys hit 7s, but those are efficient guys. They sort of, they've internalized everything. They've bought the land right. There's a special circumstance. We've seen guys go north of that with, they've just done terrific land deals. Or the city's offered some incentive to them, or something like that. But those are special. But 100, it depends. I think the more this business becomes stabilized and people understand the results, the lower that spread between the development cap rate and the sale cap rate would be. Fair enough. But if they're the same, you shouldn't build it, right? So if it's a 5% development yield and a 5% cap rate, well, you can still build it because over time your mortgage will pay off, and the value will grow and things like that. Right. The real way to look at apartments, I think, is not a cap rate. I think the real way to look at a cap rate is to the internal rate of return, right? The apartments. And Look at apartment development on a 10-year IRR basis, and here's why. Okay, so if you build if you buy a 100-unit apartment building today in Toronto, you're going to pay a four something cap rate. Okay, 50% of that money will go to expenses, and 50% will go to NOI. Right. Okay. So now let's see what happens over 10 years. So let's say you grow your income and your expenses at 2% a year, right? So your NOI is really not going up, You see my point? And the building is now going to be 60 years old because it was 50 years old when you bought it. So it's going to need CapEx work and so on, right? So unless cap rates compress between now and 10 years from now, this thing's actually a little bit underwater, okay? Assuming you haven't done something spectacular to the building. So now, let's look at a brand new building, right? Now, I'm going to back up. So the point I'd make to most apartment owners, and those of you apartment owners out here, the money you've made in the last 10 years has really been tremendous, but your cash flow hasn't gone up. It's just that your interest rates and cap rates have compressed, and you've applied a different constant to the same cash flow.
Right.
And that's why there's been an increase. Would you agree? Right? That's the way it's been. Cash flow actually hasn't gone up. So now, let's take a brand new building, and I would call this the denominator effect. Your heat, hydro, water operating costs are kind of the same for a brand new building, but your denominator is so much larger. So your operating expense ratio is not 50%, it's 30%. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah.
Right? Heat, hydro, and water, same, tax are higher, but so if you grow the 30% at 2%, right, the expenses, and then you grow the NOI, the 70% at 2%, well, lo and behold, it does grow, right?
It's a bigger
And
spread.
there's more NOI there. Even at the same cap rate, it's going to have more value. Plus, in 10 years, you got a brand new building, right? So a brand new concrete building in 10 years still looks brand new, right? Acts brand new, doesn't need CapEx work, and things like that. So I would think that when people look at apartments, and I know the institutions do it this way, pension funds have money today, and they're worried about paying out, they have a fiduciary responsibility to their members 10 years from now when they retire. So they're looking to create steady income streams. And I think in the real estate sector, nothing is steadier than apartments. Now listen, hotels are great when things are good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the money's incredible. But when things are bad, they're not good, right? Apartments, they're almost always good. I mean, we went through 2008, 2009, and I remember everyone saying, finally my time to buy some apartments cheap, right? We made the rounds with the lenders. You found the special servicer guy in every lender, the Maytag repairman, lonely guy sitting there waiting for the bankrupt deal to come. They never came. And after really a ton of work with the lenders, we picked up one 50-unit building in Windsor, right, that we sold. So I think apartments just generally are very, very stable. And if you look at them on a long-term basis, even though the returns might be fairly thin in the beginning, they certainly get better. And that's why the cap rate for apartments is being compressed. And people are paying lower and lower cap rates because they understand that. And the cap rate they'll pay is low enough that for you as a merchant builder who can build this at a 6 and sell it for a 4.5, right? That 150 points, especially as the product gets bigger, right? As the building gets bigger, that number just gets, larger.
So we just got to move on. I know there's a lot more questions. Everybody asks you about the cap rate and how much the building is worth, and it differences is per market, per product, what have you. So maybe at the end of the session, whoever has questions will address it.
I'll try and answer it now, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, because it's a difficult thing. I would say one thing. When I started the business about 30 years ago, there was a difference between Toronto and Montreal prices, right? And Toronto and other places.
Right.
Vancouver was always kind of a little lotus land by itself, right? And it just operated separately. But what I found is that cap rates, while they've all come down, if Toronto was here and Montreal was here, cap rates have compressed, but they've kind of gone like this, right? So I think there's been more of now, tertiary markets, if you have a C building in Owen Sound, right? We're not talking about that here, but we're talking about larger metropolitan. I think cap rates have gone down and compressed. So I would kind of argue to some extent that a new building, okay, that the cap rate differential between a new building in Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, maybe Winnipeg, probably they're going to be low, but the differential between the cities is not going to be that historic differential that you've seen before, right? But it'd be nice if somebody built, leased up, and sold a Class A apartment building in Toronto. I would think that there would be a lot of buyers, and it would be a 4 and maybe a 3 in front of it.
For sure.
You just don't know.
Sure.